start with a land acknowledgement. So today I'm here physically on campus at main campus at University of Regina. So we're gathering on Treaty 4 territory, which is also the homeland of the Nehi-Ewa, the Anishinaabe, and the Métis Nation, as well as the Dakota, Lakota, and Dakota nations. So these people care for and have been in relationship with the land throughout time. And in my work and life, I seek to honor these nations and the land by taking active responsibility for my role in reconciliation, learning, and decolonization. And I'd ask that as we think about the work that we're going to do today in terms of open educational resources, we just take a minute to think about what the impact and relationship that has to reconciliation and decolonization, what that relationship is, and how we can work in terms of the open educational space that is in a way that's respectful of traditional knowledges and the traditions that go around them, which isn't always necessarily going to mean that everything's going to be openly available. So we want to think about our work in that context. So I will again share the resource link. So it's just a little tiny URL, t.ly nffeoo or EO. Sorry, you can see it there in the link. So I will keep putting it in there if we got new people joining, but hopefully all of you can click on that link and access it. I am going to now share my screen, so you'll be able to see what is shared in that link on my screen as well. So let me just share screen. All right, so you should be able to now see the screen that I'm sharing, which is a Google Doc. At the top, it says software, free or commonly accessible. So if you take a look there, that will be the resource we're using today. For those of you who attended the first part of this session, that you will recognize that from the first part of the session. So we're going to focus on different parts of it. Okay. So we're going to focus on different parts of this document today. So we talked a little bit or quite a bit in the last session about resources, where you can find them, what they look like, why it's important to focus on diversity in terms of resources and representation. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of the theoretical frameworks that we have on the scholarship and education around what makes a good open educational video or a good educational video or learning video in general. And then we're going to have a lot of time to actually do some work independently with help from me, and if we're in person here with each other, at actually creating a little sample of an open educational resource video using some of those principles that we've been sharing. So again, if you want to utilize this document, this Google Doc, that's something that you can keep the URL to. You can cut and paste the whole URL once you're in there. That's always going to be openly accessible to you, so you can come back and take a look. So if you aren't familiar, you've forgotten a little bit about what are some good resources to use, you can explore this first part. But what I'm going to do right now is just scroll down to this section on build your video creation skills. And I'm going to click on the first link there, which is my quick tips tools. That's a little document that I put together that I'm going to use to go over here probably in about the next 10 or so minutes. We'll go through some of that stuff quickly. And then below that in the Google Doc is some information about the assignment or activity that we're going to be doing today. And that'll walk you guys through and then we'll get you started. So the first thing I want to talk about, I just will ask a little question and you can respond with kind of the thumbs up or the little emojis within Zoom. But how many people in the call have an education background? So have studied education or studied in terms of teaching and learning at the university level through the Center for Teaching and Learning? Any thumbs up? We got some thumbs up in the room. We have no thumbs. Oh, we got one thumb up online. So we have a mixed crowd today. So these principles we're going to go over may seem familiar to some of you who do have that education background. To others who don't, they may be new, but we don't really need to really thoroughly understand them. I just wanted to make this connection for those people who do come from that background and to maybe bring some concepts to the forefront that are maybe new for some of you. So the first thing that I want to talk about in the principles, when we look at multimedia principles in terms of using multimedia for teaching and learning, they're going to relate to backwards planning or understanding by design. And when we say backwards planning, we're talking about doing a planning process where we start at the end result or the outcome that we want. And then we work backwards in order to get to where we want to be. So I'm going to open the chat again here and just keep sharing that little link. So if you're new to the call, you can take a look at the link. We're going to use that tool. But you should be also seeing my screen and my my Zoom or my little slide kind of presentation here on your screen in Zoom. So with backwards planning in education, we start with the learning outcomes. So thinking about what we want students to come away with and what we want students to be able to do. So learning outcomes we often can think of them, especially if we're new to education, as things we want students to know. What we actually want to think about is what we want the students to be able to do. Sometimes that's describe something or, talk about something that's an idea. It's kind of a knowledge-based piece, but it can also be that we want them to have specific skills, that we want them to be able to apply the knowledge that we're giving them, that we want them to be able to create something or do something. So we're going to create our learning outcomes saying at the end of this course, at the end of this workshop, I want my students, the learners, to be able to do these particular things. That's the first step in backwards planning. And then from there, we're going to go back and say, okay, what then do we need to do for assessment? What do we need to do for the applied and practical activities students do? What information do we need to present them up front or connect with their current knowledge? And then do those things actually flow through to the learning outcomes that we want? And if no, then we want to take a look at, maybe this isn't the best thing. And one of the challenges that people often come to when they're using a backwards planning model is, especially as experts in a field, we tend to want to overload learners with a whole bunch of information about the topic that they're getting, because we think, oh, all of this is important. They really should know about this. Well, what about that? And what backwards planning or understanding by design helps us do is to cut out that extra and really focus on what do I want them to be able to do? What are the key learnings and activities that are going to get them there? We're going to see with the designing videos, very similar in terms of with a video, with anything multimedia, there is we can be tempted to go, fancy or cool. We think about back if for those of you who are as old as I am or older, will remember when we first got PowerPoint presentations, right? And people learned like you can do animations in PowerPoint. So all of a sudden you got all of these PowerPoint presentations that had like stars coming in like zing and all these like fancy little things, and everyone was in awe. But we slowly realized that type of stuff generally wasn't useful in most situations in terms of presenting or sharing information. It was actually distracting. And that's what the principles of multimedia in education are going to tell us. We want to focus on those core learning outcomes that we're focused on, and how does this video get the student to understanding or the ability to do something, rather than, what kind of fancy tools or what kind of fancy effects can we use in our video. I'm not going to show you the videos here. This link, this information, this little kind of slide deck that I put together is linked in the Google Doc. So you're always free to come back and look at this again. This will continue to be available. So I won't share the video with you, but if you're curious about backwards by design, especially in online, you can come take a look at a video that's out of U of S, their Center for Teaching and Learning there. The second concept is the idea of cognitive load. And probably even if you're not in education, you would have heard of this psychological concept that we only have so much capacity in terms of our brains. We can't be thinking about and remembering and learning everything all at once, right? So the technical idea is that if we're overloading a learner with stimuli and information, that actually has a negative impact on their being able to achieve specific learning outcomes and understand or complete certain types of tasks that we want them to. And I've linked, again, a document there. If you're curious about this, it's just an open resource that gives you a bit of an oversight, a couple of pages of information about cognitive load and where that comes from in terms of educational theory. The final approach that I want to link this to is the problem-centered instruction framework, which is a pretty straightforward framework that says when we're doing instruction, again, it's not just about giving information to students or telling them everything we know about a topic. It's actually about a number of steps that we need to do. That includes activation, so activating, making associations for the students about the topic, or doing some sort of hook that gets them interested in, why is this topic relevant, or why might I want to learn about this? Then we can provide some of that direct instruction in terms of demonstration. Here's examples. Here's what I know about it. Actually having students apply the information and then integrating it into their broader learning. What am I going to do to take this forward into my real life or my work or whatever the purpose is? You're not going to be able to do all of those steps in a video, but you'll see that the principles and the research do suggest that we want to incorporate as many of those steps as we can in the learning video. And then we want to pair things like learning videos with chances for application, those types of things. So, and as we go forward and technology gets a little bit more advanced, we are getting the capability to kind of build stops and learning checks and activities into videos. That's not very realistic for most of us yet. So it's more an issue of building the video, getting that activation in the video if we can, and also providing some context in advance for students. That's one of the principles. And then doing some application after the fact. So again, there's another little video in here about this problem-centered instruction. It's really helpful in terms of a quick and easy way to introduce the idea of kind of going beyond the lecture format in a learning environment. So that video is also then available for your use. So then we say those are some of the core kind of foundational pieces of information or ideas that already exist before we were really studying multimedia. Those apply to all kinds of teaching and learning. But then we're going to ask, what do we know about what makes a really good multimedia presentation and videos we're talking specifically about here? And some of the key research in this area, and the one I focus on because it was, kind of gives us some principles, is Mayoh's principles of multimedia learning, teaching and learning, or multimedia learning objects. There's 15, there was originally 10, I believe, but there was originally a smaller number that Mayoh had put together. And then as things advanced and as there was more research, it was expanded to 15. So I've put this in here. These are the guidelines from Mayoh. There's also in the Google Doc a link just to this document. So if you want to print it off, put it up in your office, that's great. But 15 is still a pretty big number of principles to kind of learn or remember. So I'm not going to go through them all. What I'm going to do today is just look at a few simple principles that will get us to almost all of these rules that Mayoh put together. So, and they will relate, we'll see, to those ideas we just talked about. So the first principle is to keep it simple. And we talked about this in terms of backward design. What do you want them to focus on? And make sure that those are the things that you're highlighting in your video. So when we're putting things into the video, we can make all kinds of choices. We can have those sparkling animations. We can have the, different sound effects and those types of things. And the question we want to ask ourselves is this helpful in terms of the students' learning? So sometimes it is. Sometimes a little sparkle animation can, if you've got an infographic or something, can draw the learner's attention to a part of the video or part of the information or part of the image that we want them to be paying attention to at that point. So it's not to say that, extra elements or that using some of those technological tools or more complex pieces of editing are bad. The thing is that, like everything that we're doing in the classroom, we need to be thinking, is this serving the outcome in terms of getting students to learn? So we want to be focusing on that. And again, this is one of Mayoh's principles in terms of keeping things simple and focused on the learning. And then we want to try and limit our videos to 3 to 6 minutes max. So if we're creating a learning video, there's different pieces of research that are going to say, different numbers, but generally the consensus is that 5 or 6 minutes is where you want to cut things off. If you have a short 90-second video, great, that's fine. You want it to be in depth enough that it gives them, the learners, the information you need them to have. But once you're going past that 5 to 6 minutes, you're going to see kind of a reduction in terms of retention and engagement with the video. So that's where, and so this doesn't mean that we can't use videos to teach things that need longer to really get into. What it's telling us then is maybe we need a number of videos. So rather than posting, if you've got the capacity and you're wanting to, you have a faculty member, or you are a faculty member or instructor who has kind of a longer topic that normally you would do, say, like a 30-minute lecture and just record yourself talking, is there a way you can break that up into themes or topics, and then say do 4 or 5 shorter videos on that topic? And then that gets you, if you're doing that kind of activation piece at the beginning of each video, you're kind of redirecting maybe students to the learning that they had in the first video. And so you're making some of those connections and building some of those pieces of connection there for the students between videos. And the reality is, and kind of one of the principles that you're going to see as we go through this, is we want to think about how we watch videos in our everyday lives. and what that means for educational videos. We want our educational videos to be similar to the viewing experience that people are most comfortable with. And I mean, we can roll our eyes at this, but the most experience we're most comfortable with, but for most of us in terms of learning from a video, is watching YouTube videos. And so, you know, there are some YouTube creators who do 2, 3, 4 hour videos and people sit down and watch them, but that's very much the exception, right? So often if you're scrolling, or if I'm scrolling through YouTube, I'm off and I'm looking at a concept, I'm often going to pick, especially to start, something that is in that shorter range of time in terms of like getting an introduction to it and committing to it. Same with our students. A lot of our students, even in full academic courses, are doing some of their online learning on their phone. So they're doing it, you know, on a commute or those types of things. So if we have a series of short videos, they're more likely to come back and watch the series, rather if they, you know, they get, you know, 7 minutes into a 20-minute video, we're going to lose student retention. And we've seen that in the research. Students are actually going to finish watching things if they're in those shorter bits. The next kind of just simple principle is you wanting to help learners focus. So in Mayoh's principles, he gets kind of technical about this in terms of you actually want to put, if there's pieces of information that relate to like an image, you put those physically close to each other on the screen. If there's 2 pieces of information or 2 images that are related to each other in terms of concept, you put those at the same time on the screen or right after each other on the screen. So it seems pretty sensible, but sometimes when we're just, we might default to maybe the way we would make a PowerPoint slide or those types of things. So we want to make sure we're actually clustering in terms of helping learners focus, clustering things in space because this is a visual medium, clustering things in time. We also want to provide learners with advanced context. So that's also going to help them. So rather than just sending them into the videos, we might talk to them about in class, these are the videos you're going to watch this week. This is what they're about. What do we know about this? And set that context. And then the last point that I have here is to use the visuals and text to deepen or extend key points. So we generally know, and when we look at Mayoh's principles, we don't want a bunch of text on the screen. One of the big no-nos in terms of multimedia is having a voiceover and narrator, and then also having what they're saying either in the exact same words or in slightly different words, just kind of listed on the screen. That is actually distracting the learners. It's not helping them focus. They're trying to process the information in different ways, and it's going to distract from their actual learning. So the way we want to use text is very sparingly. So absolutely not to exclude text altogether, but you might say, okay, if this video is about, you know, the 4 principles of such and such, the only text we're going to have on the screen through the 3-minute video is the 4 principles, right? Principle 1, and then you have a little bit of talking and video about it. Principle 2 comes underneath it, etc. We're not going to have all of the narration repeated. So text is used to really focus in students' attention. Same with images, where we can use an image. That's the power of images, and we'll talk about that as we go, to really kind of bring things to mind for students that they wouldn't necessarily, that we don't have time to talk about, or just kind of to bring different associations to that learning to mind for them. So the last couple of principles that I have here are shown now. The next one is make it personal. So again, if we look at Mayoh's principles, scholarship has found that students, learners respond best if they're learning kind of the way that we were evolved to learn, which is from another person. So use a human voice. If you're going to use like an automated voiceover software, we have some good ones now. There are options. You might want to even splurge a little bit and pay for one that sounds like a human rather than one that sounds really stilted and like a robot, because that is not going to connect with people. It just inherently isn't as successful in helping people learn. And if you have a narrator on screen, whether that's animated, whether that's you, they should look and act like a kind of a natural human being. So if they're just like a cutout of a photo and their mouth is moving, that's not great. If you have an animated character, they should move around. They should work, use their hands a little bit. It's fine if they're animated. We can connect that to a human being, but they need to have some of those mannerisms of a regular human. And even if it's you as an instructor, we want to generally avoid kind of that talking head piece. So that's not necessarily as what we would normally have in a conversation, is just somebody's kind of like stationary head. Again, not to say you can't have bits of you talking or introducing things or in there, but just having somebody sit there kind of staring into the camera for the whole video isn't as effective as some other means. So not to say never ever do it, but when we're trying to be strategic about it, we're going to maybe mix that with some other kinds of content. And my last point says here, it's again, back to the YouTube thing. So be yourself, be natural, be like a feel-good YouTuber version of yourself. So think about your own favorite YouTubers or like the most popular YouTubers in the world. What do they do? And I can't take credit for this. I'm going to have to go back through a whole bunch of my notes and the videos from CTL because there was a session that CTL ran probably about it might have even been in COVID about online teaching and learning. And there was a faculty member from U of R who said that that is the way they conceptualize their videos, is as they try and use kind of a YouTube or popular YouTube video model. I thought that was really great. So I'm going to have to go back and find his name to give him credit. But I realized I just took like written notes on that. So I'd have to flip back through a whole bunch of stuff. But we know that those people are using the tips and the tricks to make a really compelling video. So often if we're going on and learning from a YouTuber, we connect with them kind of as a person. I like doing yoga. I'm not a big yogi, but I say one of my best friends during the pandemic was Adrian from Yoga with Adrian on YouTube. So those YouTubers that make us feel like we kind of know them, that there's that personal touch. It's the same in terms of educational videos. And that can feel a little awkward because we're used to the really scholarly kind of academic piece. But most of us are used to and comfortable within the classroom, being more relaxed, connecting with our students. So bringing that same thing to video can be really helpful. I guess a caveat there is if we're using humor in online or on a video, you always need to be careful with humor and how it's going to hit with different groups. So you always want to make sure that, especially if it's recorded for perpetuity and for students to go around showing other people, you just want to make sure that humor that you're using in that attempt to be personable is going to be something that is, builds everybody up and that is appropriate. So the final kind of idea is to take advantage of the medium. And so we know that when we do videos, again, we don't want it to look like a PowerPoint slide. If it's just like a bunch of text, it's not really using the medium. We don't need to have a video in that case. We may as well just go with a PowerPoint slide. So they are most successful, the scholarship tells us, if they're mostly narration, visuals, and minimal text. So that's the most successful combination, which is unique to the video. And tell a story. So again, learning, teaching is very much a storytelling activity. Video creators have a really good opportunity to tell a story using both visuals and audio. So it's a new way of approaching things in terms of different than a lecture or different than some of the written types of content that we give students online. So if you can do that, if you can think about what's that hook, how am I telling a story at the beginning? And I put this image in here. It's a beautiful, looks like a painting on a fence, where we can see just this one image can show us something very powerful about kind of starting to tell us a story about something that's happening or going on. So that would be another tip that I would give, is to use art as well, use metaphor where you can in terms of your images. If you can find, rather than just stock photos of, a person standing or sitting at a computer typing, etc. If you can find more compelling visuals, and actually sometimes it is easier to find art in terms of open resources than it, because a lot of art is so historical, that can be really helpful. So to drive home the point about the videos and YouTubers, I don't know, does anybody know who this is? Can you put it in the chat? Do you see this guy? Does it say? It might say on there. No, I don't think it says. So anybody recognize this man? If you have children, Karen does have kind of teen and tween children, so she knows that this is Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is the most popular YouTuber ever. I have mixed feelings about Mr. Beast. Some of what he does it's not super problematic, but there's lots going on. So I'm not saying all around he's the hero to be looked up to, but he's the person who's been most successful in kind of taking this medium and bringing it out to the masses. And he also does a lot of charitable work. So my children argue with me, don't be against Mr. Beast. He gave away this much money to charity and he built this school, etc. So this is just one of his videos about giving away free food. I'm going to play and you guys can give me a thumbs up if I'll skip to it. If we don't hear it, that's fine. But what I want to do is, so he's saying, what if I told you that this card could feed 500 people? Can you guys hear the video? No, okay. And he's just talking a little bit here about, all of this food that we have. You can see the pictures in terms of food waste in the world. And then he's going to tell a story about a university student who realized he had, you know, a number of meals left on his meal card at the end of the year and took that meal card. This is the university student, took the meal card, went and bought all those 50 meals and then went out and gave those, like donated them to a charitable organization. And then from that start, this is where Mr. Beast's charitable organization that gave away $30 million in free food. So if you want to take a look at this when you're looking at this resource, you certainly can. The point wasn't to watch the whole video, but it was to see those pieces in terms of what he did in the video. So he starts kind of shoving that card in her face saying, what if I told you this could feed, you know, 50 people? And so that kind of interesting, there's a story there. We see him right off the bat. One of the things I think why Mr. Beast is so successful is kind of an everyman. He's just kind of like a nice guy. He does a lot of his videos with his group of friends who are just kind of goofing around, being kind of normal young people. And then they end up going on like these $1 million yachts, et cetera, or the Eiffel Tower. And so it's compelling in that way. And then he brings in, we can see these images. He showed those images of like huge piles of garbage in the, it's not really complex filmmaking. He's using still images for the most part. So again, things that we could find in an open educational kind of context, but he's doing it in a way that puts together a compelling story and isn't just him standing there talking. He introduces other characters like the university student, etc. So if you want to check out that video or just your favorite YouTuber, those can be really good resources in terms of thinking about what your videos can look like. So that's it in terms of the kind of the information that I wanted to share today about what are some principles that we want to think about when we're creating these videos. And I know today we want to get a little bit more of that application piece in. So as you go down the Google Doc, you can see there's a collaborative resource and asset gallery. So if you have ideas for places where people can go to get assets and to use them, you can add those there. That would be really great. And then what we're going to do is work on this video creation project. So we'll go through these steps. I will go through them first and show you kind of the first number of steps that we're going to do. And then I'll turn it over to you if you want to start working on it and then get started and get going while I'm talking. That's great. If you just want to watch me do the first few steps and then go and do it yourself, you can do that as well. So there's a link to Clipchamp. So if you click on that link, you can set yourself up an account. This is a Microsoft product, which is one of the reasons why I chose it when I'm doing workshops like this, is because most people are fairly, oh no, do I have to, it looks like your browser is not supported. I'm going to just have to move to Microsoft Edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unstop sharing here for a second and then move to Microsoft Edge, and I'm going to start sharing again in terms of my Clipchamp. But why don't everybody take a moment then to make sure that you can open a browser where you can work in Clipchamp, sign up for a free account, and then we'll all kind of meet together here in 2 or 3 minutes where everybody's signed into Clipchamp. So give me 1 sec. Okay, so were people able to follow that link to Clipchamp and to get in there? Okay, we've got 1 person in. Karen, I see there's a message that says no. Is that about something to do with Mr. Oh, have to start by downloading Edge to, so, okay, so. Edge. Oh, you're all good. Okay. Okay. All right. So hopefully people have gotten, it's more about which browser you're using. So hopefully you should have Edge on your computer. Any of the Microsoft ones that the university has should just be able to, you should have Edge on there, even if it's not the one you use normally. So if you just go down to the bottom of your screen to the little magnifying glass and type in Edge, there's a good chance Edge will just open up for you, even if you haven't downloaded it before. So what we're going to start by doing is clicking on create a new video. And we can just X out of here. So I'm going to be following the steps very closely that I have in the bottom of the Google Doc. So first, number one was to create a free Clipchamp account and sign in. Click create your first video or create a new video. Most of you, it'll probably be create your first video. And then what we're going to do is the number 3, I think the easiest thing, I've given you 2 options in terms of finding some audio or a source of audio. So the first one that I gave you is you can actually, it's a link that takes you to listen notes, which shows you in the Creative Commons podcasts that are available. So you could go through and look for a podcast episode that's relevant to your work that you want to use. But I've also just created, the second link there is just a link to a podcast episode that I have chosen a little clip from that's just talking about open education. And so we can use this if you want to kind of work along with me and be using the exact same audio as myself and other people in the group. What you're going to do is click on that link. You'll see this special episode come up, and then you're going to click on more on the right-hand side. There's share, save, share, clip, more. You're going to actually download the audio, and you'll just be a pop-up you have to close, which will open up a black screen for you here. It's not a death black screen. It's a black screen where this podcast episode has opened up with the 3 little dots, which you'll then click on and say download. So I'm going to have to, so this is downloading right onto the computer. And then I'm going to be able to upload it into my Clipchamp video that I'm creating. So this is what you're going to want to do with all of the resources that you're going to use today to create your video. So whether you go to Flickr or Pexels and you're downloading a video or some audio or a photograph, those types of things, you're going to just download them onto the computer, into the download folder or wherever you do your downloads. And then when you go into Clipchamp, you're going to click on import media and go to downloads. And it, under today should have the file that you have just downloaded. So as you can see, I now have an audio file, and any content that I import using this import media button is going to show up here in this side menu. And I can then just click and drag it down into my timeline. So as you can see, another reason I picked Clipchamp is it's a fairly straightforward editing tool. So even if you don't have a lot of experience, you're going to be able to hopefully get the hang of it. And if not, we can talk through some of the challenges that you're having around using it. So now we have, you can see here, 1 hour and 6 minutes. It's the whole podcast episode. And as we remember from the, if we think back to the presentation that I just did, do we want to make 1 hour and 6 minute video? You guys can use your little, I've got some thumbs up in the room. I have some thumbs and then they went down for you guys online. No, Gina says, and that's exactly correct. We don't want to make that video. If only for purely selfish reasons. I just made a 9-minute animated video because one of my colleagues asked me like so nicely and I couldn't say no. And it was one of the worst decisions I've made at work in a long time. So even for your own sanity, you want to keep it shorter. So now we're on step 6, edit the audio to remove most of the audio except the following clip that runs from about 9 minutes 10 seconds. It starts with somebody saying, in terms of tips, and up to 10:28. It ends with help when you need it. So all we need to do within Clipchamp to edit this audio, we've got this audio here, is to go, you can see if I take my mouse and I put it over top of the audio, for the most part, I just have this little finger I can click. But if I go to the beginning or the end where you've got the 2 lines, it becomes a double arrow that's going to let me click and drag. So I literally can just drag along, and you can see above, if you look above the timeline here, it tells me where I'm at in terms of the audio. So I've now, when I'm clicking and dragging, now it's saying 0 because I'm not on there. But when I go back to click and drag, I want to click and drag it to about that point of 9 minutes and 10 seconds. So I'll get it as close as I can here, and we'll We'll zoom in later and we can be more precise, but for now, with this big long piece that we're trying to edit, we can just go to the beginning, and then again, I'm going to click on the end and then drag it to about 10:28. So if I take a look along the top, I can see now I'm getting down 23, and I want to go right down to 10:23. Let me see. Oh. So I get about as close as I can there. So I have this little bitty now piece of audio that I'm going to use to create my video. And so now this is our timeline. It starts way over here where this white line is. And you can see that my audio is now kind of floating in the middle of the video. So I don't want that. I want my audio to be, if not right at the beginning, kind of after my initial slide. But it's really easy. We're just, again, going to use that little click, that little finger, and then I can drag my audio towards the beginning there. So, and I can also zoom in. So if you see above the timeline, there's a zoom in, zoom out button. Right now I'm zoomed all the way out, and I'm going to want to go in and be a little more precise in terms of, because this is going to be a short video, you can see we have about 2 minutes worth of audio here. And so now I can be more precise in terms of editing where I'm at with my audio. Okay. So I'm just going to pause there for a sec. And I would like to hear feedback from people about whether they've been able to get to that spot. I'm going to give you a couple, let's say 3 minutes just to kind of work on it. If you're really fast, you've got a little break to get some water or whatever. But I'll check in 3 minutes, and we've actually figured out a way to have some volume in the room. So in about 3 minutes, you guys can pop on your audio or your cameras or both, and tell me if you've been able to get to this point or if you have questions of what we've done up to here. So I see, Donna, you're saying you don't have you're going to have to kind of wait in terms of Clipchamp. If you do have any other audio or video editing software, if you're on a Mac, you might have iMovie built in, those types of things. So if you do have something that's already on there, you can check it out. But that's unfortunate that you're going to have to wait for them. Otherwise, I picked Clipchamp because I thought it would be kind of one of the easier ones for people to access and use. But really, this process is going to be similar on any software. It's just the level of complexity in terms of the softwares that you're using can differ. Okay, I'm going to be quiet here in a minute, and I'm going to have Shauna is going to turn up the volume on the laptop she's joined us with, so we can hear from you guys if you are able to turn on your mics, and just let me know if you've been able to get to this point. No, nobody wants to talk, so maybe we'll have to mute that again. Shauna, and I will keep walking you through this process. I got it, Dina says, so that is great. Perfect. So we'll keep going from here. So now I have my short audio clip here. Because I'm on a computer that doesn't have audio, I haven't been able to get really precise in terms of editing exactly where it starts and ends. But if you are being able to listen to it, what you can do is just zoom right in, at which point you're going to be able to edit it. Kind of, you listen to it, you get to the point where you can hear just before the beginning of the person saying in terms of, and you can now, as you zoom in, just be very, very precise in terms of editing it in fractions of a second, and same with the end. So once you're zoomed in there, that's the kind of key in a video or audio editing tool. If you want to get really precise, if you want to figure out where the or is to cut it out, those types of things, you can get in there and you can pull, to the beginning and get it set up to be right where you want it in terms of the audio that you want to include or disclude. So we've got the audio that we want. We probably, with most videos, if we're going to, we have the choice if we want to put kind of an initial title slide at the beginning. If you're not doing that, you might want the audio starting right off the bat or pretty close to the beginning. Maybe not like right at the beginning, because if you think about logging onto a video, you're not ready to learn at that second. So you might want to have your image come up and then give at least a fraction of a second for people to get kind of orientated to the video before they are listening to the audio. So you're going to place your audio wherever it is that you want it, whether that's, kind of 0.5 seconds in, or whether that's 3 seconds in, because you want to have a few seconds of a a title slide wherever you're going to want it. If you would like to create a simple title slide, if you take a look at the left menu, so if you click off of your audio, right now when you were kind of clicked on audio, you had audio options along the right-hand side, but you can see, so we're on audio here. That's the audio editing options, but there's also other options in terms of what you can do to add things to your video. So text, we go to, now I'm tricking myself here, guys. Oh, here, sorry, I'm getting my right and my left confused. So the text option is on the left-hand side of the screen. So if you click on text, it's going to give you a whole bunch of options for a title slide. We got to be careful if we're doing an open educational resource that we're not necessarily using some of these more fancy presets that they have here, because there is the potential that if you're using the assets that are available within a software, that those can have some level of copyright protection. Plain text does not have copyright protection on it. So if you are going to just choose, so again, we're going to click and drag, click plain text, drag it down into the video. So you'll see audio is going to stay below in the kind of the little part of our timeline, the second line. But whatever we're adding in terms of visuals can go in the line above, or even we can layer it in a few lines above. So I've just dragged text down here. It's kind of at a default of about 4 seconds, and I can add my text here. So say my video, I want to call it Open Resources. And then I can use the right-hand side menu, sorry, to change things like the colors and the background color and whatever it is that I want to change in terms of how I want to format it. It's then my creation, and I can decide in terms of the copyright and providing it as an open resource. We can use these presets as inspiration if you want to try and recreate something that looks like it. And certainly depending on the tool that you're using, you can take a look more at Google, just like ask the question, can I use these presets, or is there copyright there? Or look at the terms of service, which can be a little trickier. And so if you're able to assure yourself that you are able to use these things and have open access, that's great. But I just want to be careful when people are using different tools, that you don't just go and start grabbing video clips and those types of things or transitions and assuming that you're going to be able to use the Creative Commons license or those types of things. So again, if I want to make changes to this title slide, I just click on it, and it's going to give me the options to, create different colors, patterns, all that kind of stuff. We can also do a fade. So we can have this title slide fade in and out, which creates like a really easy little effect that's not over the top. It's not going to distract the learners. So so much that they're going to be it's going to be distracting from their learning, but it will give it a little bit more of kind of a polished look. So now if I drag back to the beginning of the timeline, I can do this here. And click off of there. And then I can press play, and I can see how I have a short fade in of my slide. My audio starts in, and then my audio continues. So now I need some more visual resources. So at this point, I've got my title slide and my audio. So what I'm going to suggest that you do now is to use the links that are higher in the, I can hear myself a bit now, that are higher up in this document. So if you take a look, at the Google Doc that we have, that I shared the link for in the chat, the chart and the tables that are at the beginning show things like Pexels and Pixabay and other places where you can find video and images that you're going to be able to use for your video. I would suggest, if you're just deciding where to go, that one of the first things that you're going to want to do is to go to Pexels. So in that second table under photos and/or video clips, the fifth option is Pexels. So go there and take a look and start to think about what you might want to do in terms of downloading some videos and some pictures that are going to go with your video. So I'm going to mute myself here while we try and fix some of the technical stuff, but you guys can go on a little scavenger hunt for images and videos. Yes, we can now hear you. So that's very exciting. for us now. So if anybody wants to jump on and talk, you're certainly welcome to do that and we'll be able to hear. So what I'm going to do here is just go on Pexels myself, grab a few images and video clips. And so then I'll take another minute to do that while you are still exploring yourselves. And then I will show you how we're going to integrate those into our video. All right, so we got the solution going on in the room here. I'm glad, Donna, that you're able to try iMovie. Hopefully that will allow you to kind of walk through this process with us. So you can see here, I just opened Pexels. I find Pexels is a really, if you're going to look for kind of public domain or openly available video footage that's polished, Pexels is probably my #1 resource for kind of generic subjects. So if I'm looking for, like this images of people learning or things, a business meeting, those types of things, Pexels is really great. You're going to find a lot of options compared to other sources that you're going to. It's not necessarily going to find you the types of other more specialized footage. So those where you'd go to maybe to Flickr and search by Creative Commons license or go to other, the Internet Archive, those types of things, if you need footage. I think I mentioned last time of like historical pipeline building, in like the 50s and 60s, that kind of stuff. You're not going to find that on Pexels, but you will find these more general topics. So I could even put, learning is bringing me up a lot of kids. So I might say college class and see what I get. So here we go. So here I've got some, some videos I see in a classroom. They're taking place with adults. So I think, okay, this is going to be helpful for my video on open educational resources. So I'm going to download them. You'll see as they come up that there's going to be the creator of the resource, their name is going to come up. So if you're choosing to provide, to kind of provide a shout out to all of the creators that you're using images or content from, you can take that information down. Because this is completely to public domain, we're not required to do that. But if you're using Creative Commons licenses that are a little bit more restrictive, where you are required to indicate who the content creator was, or to publish your resources at the same level of restrictiveness or non-restrictiveness as the original content, you have to be really aware of that at this point. I usually will use a document. If I'm using a video, I just use a Google Doc, a Word doc, whatever it is, and then say, this is the resource that I downloaded, and this is where it came from, and this is if it's not just like a generally completely open public domain resources, this is the copyright license, the Creative Commons license that it was published under. So when I get to the end of my video creation, I can then make sure that I am documenting all of the places where those are coming from, making sure that I'm choosing the appropriate Creative Commons license for my video. If there was a requirement on some of the other content that things created with them have a specific kind of level or type of openness in terms of the licensing that you're choosing. So that's something that you need to be really, really cognizant of as you're grabbing your resources, because if you just grab and download a whole bunch of resources, and then forget about that, you're going to have a really tough time later on trying to go back and and to get them. One of the things to do, and I do this usually myself as a backup, is if I'm going to download a resource on Flickr or Pexels, I will usually favorite it, so that I know if I sign back into my Flickr account or my Pexels account, if I do mess up somehow in terms of tracking what I'm using, or if I go to reuse an image or something I downloaded for one purpose and I want to reuse it for another purpose, I then have an easy time going back and finding what the copyright restrictions or what license it was published under, which I learned the hard way after I had to go back and document the license for something that I had shared with somebody else, and then they wanted proof that it was public domain, and I spent many hours going through Flickr trying to find it. So I grabbed this video. If I click at the top here and I can go with photos, I could, grab some photos as well. So I'm going to say textbooks, so that I can show you how we're going to kind of integrate photos into a video as well. So let's download this one. And here we go. study. So now I have a number of downloaded resources on my computer here. So I'm able to go out of text and go back up. And when I'm in Clipchamp, if I go back up on the left-hand menu to your media, again, I will see my option to import media. So I'll click on import media and I'll see that now I have a number of other things that I've downloaded here today, including a couple of pictures and video. So I'm going to open those. And then it's really going to be, to start, as simple as dragging and dropping things down into my timeline. So here I've got a photograph, say this is the first image that I want showing after my title slide. I can either drag it down into the same line as my title. Oh, maybe I can't. I can't drag it down into the same line depending on which tool you're using. And with a photo, I can kind of drag and stretch if I want the photo showing for, you know, half a second or 5 seconds or whatever the case it is. So I can say this is the time frame that I want to have my photo in. I'm going to drag it back a little bit to line it up with my title slide so I'm not having a gap there. Then say I want this video of students in the classroom. So I will going to put that right after here, but I don't want it quite as long. So again, I'm going to drag it over here. You can see as I add things to my video, different software is going to track this different ways, but it'll show you that it's been added to the video. So these have little check marks under them now, so that if you're creating a larger video or a larger resource, that can be really helpful just in terms of have I already put this in. And then I'm going to take my final photograph here and plop it in. Again, we can do some effects with our photographs. So if we don't just want a still photograph, we want to give it a little bit of movement. Again, we don't want this to be super distracting, but generally as consumers of media, we're used to photos having some sort of pan or zoom that's not too extreme in a video. I find it's often actually more distracting if you have just like a static image sitting there for a longer time without a bit of a pan or zoom, because it can feel a little bit not continuous with the video elements. So sometimes it actually seems to flow better and draw less attention if you actually have just a very mild. So say I choose this photo and I say effects. I could potentially have just like a movement of the, let's see, we don't want a pulse or a spin. So we have the fade in and out, which is also a good option. Let's see, maybe I can't. Here, let's try this. So one other thing you want to be noticing is where this white line is on your timeline. So that's going to be what is showing up on this main interface here on your screen. So if I drag back to the beginning, I'm right at the beginning of this opening slide. If I drag it over here, I'm going to see what my videos and photos look like. And what I can see here is that my photo isn't quite as big as my screen. So I can actually go in and resize it, go in and out, kind of figure out how I want to show that photo on the screen. Same thing with the video. I will have to drag my little line here over to the video. I can click on it, say I want it a bit closer up of our professor here. I could do that. Again, you need to be careful about what quality of materials you're using or your assets, because as soon as you're zooming in a lot, you're going to start losing some of the visual quality. And so if they're not really high quality pictures or videos, you're going to want to stay kind of zoomed out in terms of making things look good. And again, my study here needs to be a little bit bigger to fill up my screen. Okay, so say with this study one, I want to fade it in a little bit, just a teeny bit. So it's coming in, fade it out a little bit. Okay, and then to sample, I can always just go back to the beginning of my timeline and play. I think the audio is going to show up on this one, so let's give it a try here.
In terms of tips for people who are curious and people who want to start, I think one of the first ones is recognizing that you don't have to there's plenty of other parts of the project that you can teach you, so many more.
Okay, so you can see my audio is a little bit off in terms of I've got a little bit of the last word that she's saying here before she says in terms of. So if I go take a look and click on audio, I should be able to see, okay, the word is going to start over here where those sound waves start. So I can, again, yeah, clean it up a little bit. There we go. I'm closer in now. So I guess another piece in terms of, like I said, providing some movement on some of these elements is the transitions piece. Again, you need to be careful in terms, you don't want it to be too distracting, but things like a fade, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You can then drag the transitions and put them in between two different elements within your visuals. And then if you play, you'll see that it creates a little bit of a difference. So there we go. So that's a bit of a subtle fade in between the two. Okay. So are there any questions about where we're at this point, or any of the parts of this process that we've gone over so far? Oh, Ellen says that they love it. That's super exciting. I'm glad. I do find Clipchamp to be like a really nice feel and fit for instructors or people who aren't really into kind of multimedia or editing. There are some tools listed on the Google Doc that are like really intensive and are often used by more kind of experienced audio visual editors, and they can be really intimidating. This one tends not to be. So it does tend to be, you know, you can download your resources, you can add them on here. I even find, like, if you want to do more of a talking head video of yourself talking for a few minutes, just bringing in some of this type, you know, going to Pexels, getting some images of the garbage in the garbage dump when you're talking about, you know, the problem of waste or whatever it is, and just bringing those in over that video of you talking can be helpful in terms, and the initial slide, like just an introductory slide, can be helpful in terms of, you know, making the watch a bit more compelling than just kind of a standard lecture video. Go ahead. I think there's a question in the room here.
Yeah, so I can totally see this. Seems way easier than other stuff I've tried in the past for video editing, and I've always just gone back to just doing everything in one take.
Yeah,
and it is what it is. And now I can see how I'm going to do my audio and video separately when I'm doing a screen capture or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I think this will take my videos from a D- to at least a C. But I'm wondering, so if I record audio and then record video and then I want to put some images, how do I decide what's on top?
So that's okay. So the question, if you didn't hear it,
recording that I'll have keep running in the background, and I just need to bring my image to the top, right? So
right.
There's probably a way to tell it to do that.
There is. So this is a really good question. The question is, if you didn't hear it or if it was a little echoey, so what if I decide I'm going to record myself talking, my head, you know, we're going to put that in there. And then I also want to have some video over top, what I was just talking about. So I can show you right here. So if you look, it's actually super intuitive. So say I took this, let me see, I'm going to take this picture out for now. I'm going to take, this is the video of you talking here. Okay. So this is your video. That is you, and you decide, okay, what I want to do is have a little bit of me and then a little bit of this photograph of the garbage dump. You just put it over top. So it's literally like stacking physically. So whatever's higher is going to show. So you can still, so you can still have your, you don't have to edit out the little bits and pieces where you want to go between your video of your face and your video of like your photographs of other content. You just stack on, like you just stack content like that. It's the same. Obviously, if you have more than one audio track, they're going to run simultaneously, but again, they're also going to be in two different levels. And you want to, if you do decide to use music, background music ever for anything, it's not always like, if you're making a learning video, it's not necessarily, it can be distracting. But if you're making something more for like a professional setting, like a professional development thing where you want to be a little bit flashier and look really like professional, or if you're trying to make something fun, I know one of the faculty members I work with makes like movie trailers for his courses. So students can go online and like watch a movie trailer. And so those have like more dramatic like music and cuts and stuff, because they're trying to sell like, we're going to learn about like environmental policy, right? And so you've got that. If you do that, it's just really important. One of the things that you can do in terms of audio is when you click on the audio, you can see we've got the audio controls as volume. So if you're going to add music, you need to be really cognizant of what the level of the music volume is and what the level of your voice volume is, because you're going to want to drop the music. I'll use music sometimes for animated videos, and I often have it at about 15% and then the spoken at 100%. So it's there, but it's not competing. It gives a little bit of ambience, but it's not competing with the overall voiceover. So I'm just going to drag this photo again a little bit bigger so that it takes up the whole screen. And then we can see again, if we go through our timeline. So it's just going to go smoothly between the video and then back to the video once the timeline of the picture is done. And again, you can adjust that time, like how long you want the picture. And so what's going to happen as you're making a video is I hope you like the voiceover and your topic, because you're going to end up going through it again and again just to get those timings right. How long should this picture be? Okay, it needs to end when this word is said. So you're going to go through and just kind of drag and readjust things until you get kind of the right timing in terms of the way that the different elements are. A nice thing about most of the video editing software is that Clipchamp, if you are, I don't know if Donna was able to get onto iMovie, there's lots and lots of tutorials online on YouTube or descriptions about how to do things. So if you're curious, okay, I would like to now add this type of an element, or I want to do this type of editing, you can usually just Google it and find a YouTube video that's going to actually walk you through how to do it in the software as well. So there's different pieces that you can do. Are there any other questions online there? Clipchamp also has like an app. So if you are, like your students are watching their videos on their phones, if you are somebody who likes to do some of these things kind of on the run or be working on some of your learning materials on the run, there are tablet or phone apps, which actually with some of this editing can be nice if because you're able to kind of use the touch screen and do those types of things. So that's more comfortable for you. A lot of us may have used iMovie on our iPhones. We'll have that just as an automatic part of the iPhone, the preloaded apps on your iPhone. So you do kind of generally have a video editing software in your pocket if you're comfortable using that and working on the phone. All right, well, it doesn't sound like there's other questions. And we have some people in the room who have to run. So what I'll do is I'm going to hang around for a little while longer, but certainly if people want to just ask specific questions just to me or keep working for a little longer, we'll go for the next 10 minutes.